welcome back to the White Coat Club. My name is Lindsay, and I'm one of our counselors here at Moon Prep. And today I have my fellow counselors here with me, Nicole and Alix, and we're going to be talking about one of the most important things for BSMD applications. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more great content about direct med and college admissions. Alix, kick us off. What does a BSMD candidate's application typically look like?
That is a great question. So I think it's really important to just highlight how competitive BSMD programs really are. So it is crucial for students to showcase their academic achievements via a few different ways, right? We have our transcript and our resume. So typically a BSMD application will have a high focus on, medical focus activities such as research or hospital volunteering, physician shadowing. Sometimes students will be in Science Olympiad. We do have a lot of students, I feel like, in robotics and speech and debate as well. Really showcasing other areas as well of community involvement, leadership, and those are kind of like a lot of the big items. But I do really think it's important to mention that yes, our BSMD candidates applications will have a lot of medical focused items, but it is also okay for students to have other passions outside of medicine, whether music or athletics or maybe a job. A lot of students will also show commitment to their community or their culture. So every single BSMD application, I feel like, does look a little bit different just by their interests and their passions as well.
Completely agree. I feel like that's one thing I always say, like, especially in like new client calls, that yeah, BSMD programs are looking for kind of like particular things, but there's like a lot of different ways that you can check those boxes. It's not like if you do like one, two, three, four things, like, and then they're like, you're good to go. It can look different. It should look different. So it all just depends on like where your interests and your passions are at the end of the day. Now, Nicole, do you think that research is necessary for showcasing a passion for medicine? And, what kind of role does extracurricular involvement in general play in showcasing passion for medicine?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's kind of I'm thinking to kind of piggyback off what you said in the sense of, there's no direct formula. Unfortunately, we wish that there was, but it's just not possible. I think research depends on the student. If you are someone that really has a passion for it and you see yourself being in more of the physician scientist role or doing cancer research or something like that in your practice, I think research is extremely important. If you're not really positive, maybe doing an exploratory research would be a great idea, like rising researchers or something that you can do in the younger years. But if you have a passion for, maybe family medicine and research is just not your thing, and you're doing other things that are exploring medicine in terms of shadowing and volunteering, and you have a lot of that fulfilling your time, I don't know if you necessarily need the research, especially if you're not planning on applying to some of those more research heavy programs.
Yeah, I would completely agree. I feel like research is like one of those things that you it's not necessary. There definitely are programs that want it, but like I know when we talked to like VCU before, they said that that's not necessarily a priority. They'd rather see like clinical exposure or things like that. So I think it just will depend on what your goals are and what kind of programs you're looking for.
Yeah, and I think like just to piggyback, like for RPI or Rochester's BSMD, like their supplements are about research. They're research institutions, physician scientist programs. So like for those two schools, if you like research, great. You should probably have it on your resume and apply there.
Mhm. What do you think makes like a BSMD application stand out, Alex?
Ooh, that's a great question. So I really think a student's passion really makes their application stand out. So as I kind of mentioned, the application will encompass many different pieces of the puzzle, right? So their transcripts, so we'll see the rigor of their courses, whether they took AP or IB or dual enrollment. We'll see their GPA. Their application will also have their college essay and their resume. So that will include all of their extracurriculars. Letters of recommendation are also like a key part of the application. So I think all of these components together really paints a picture of a student. So if that student chose the most rigorous, course path, has, took the SAT or ACT and has a great score, their essay is really personal to them and their, life story or something that they're really proud of and that they wanted to share. The letters of recommendation also highlight that individual's personality or commitment to STEM or, commitment to their academics, as well as their resume highlighting their interest in STEM or their interest in music or their interest in research, wherever all of their passions kind of collide. I think that's where the picture is painted for the admission counselors as they kind of review each part. And then I think the last piece is the interview, right? So the admission counselors have like a picture of who they think the student is. And then the interview really gets to bring that all to focus and they actually get to meet that student and, get to learn more about their interests and their passion. So I think all the pieces are important, but I think collaboratively and cumulatively together, they create, a picture for the admission counselors.
Think passion is something too that like kids don't necessarily think about. Like a lot of times, like kids will do things just because they think that colleges want to see that activity on their list. Like I've had a lot of families who ask me, like, "Oh, we need to do sports or something, right?" Because like every kid who gets accepted to a top college or a BSMD program has done sports. I don't think that's the case. If you love doing sports, like go for it. If not, like then don't do sports. Like it's fine as long as you got like other activities where you are working on a team or collaborating with others and are able to showcase those skills, then that's fine. Passion, I think though, is the big thing that colleges, BSMD programs in particular, really care about.
I think it's a great point of like, I feel like we always hear like, well, what do I need or what am I missing? So a lot of times people do want to like check that box and like, do I need to have that, instrument? Do I need to have that, varsity sport? And I think as a whole, like we really look at the student's entire profile and you don't have to check every box, but what is it that you really enjoy doing? I'd much rather have a student, do community service rather than play a sport if that's what they like to do, right? We want to be doing things that we're passionate about. And then the colleges will also see that passion.
And
So
I think
true.
it's so hard to write about something that you don't have a passion for. So if you're talking about like your most meaningful extracurricular activity and the student wants to talk about, you know, their research because they feel like that's what they need to hear, if they're not passionate about it, it's really hard for that to come through in the essay.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. It's so easy to write about a topic that you really enjoy or that meant something to you. And then it's like pulling teeth to write about something that you really didn't enjoy at all.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And regardless of how well the student writes, it's so obvious to
Yeah.
hear the tone.
Completely agree. And that's gonna hold true for like interviews as well. Not like, of course, if they get through like the initial like screening stage, I think the kids are able to demonstrate that passion for their activities, who like do get excited, who do like demonstrate that they care about certain things. I think that they always tend to do way better as well, just because they show that they care. Like, medicine is not an easy path and you have to really want it. It's a 6 to 8 year kind of program. If you're just kind of like lukewarm on it, you might fizzle out after like 3 or 4 years and might not make it to med school, and they're kind of betting on you to make it, so you wanna be able to have that passion that's enough to drive you to the end. We get a lot of questions too about, like, resume. How many hours of shadowing do you typically see on, like, a successful, like, BSMD application?
Oh, great. I would love to take that question. So before COVID, I feel like a lot of BSMDs actually had like a minimum number of hours that they required or recommended for BSMD applicants. And since COVID, I feel like a lot of those numbers have really gone away. So my advice to my families is really consider the quality over the quantity. Do you want to have enough experience that kind of what you just said, Lindsay, too, like you want to be able to confirm to these schools that this is the right path for me. I've experienced, a great deal of hours in the field, and I know that this is what I really want to do in my, future career. But I think a lot of times as well, we want to have really meaningful experiences. So if you are shadowing and you get to have patient interaction and you get to do vitals and complete paperwork and support maybe some patients with their insurance. Those are some really meaningful experiences that you can talk about in your essays. So I think a lot of times it's really the quality of the time that you get to experience in these shadowing experiences over an exact number that you necessarily need.
A great point. I feel like people totally get fixated on numbers, like how many hours of shadowing do I need? How many hours of like volunteering do I need? Um, like those types of things. And I feel like that's really the key part and the key difference between like quality over quantity. We want to see quality. And that's really what matters at the end of the day.
I feel like it's a similar theme with how many different places they should shadow at. Some families want to know if they should do 3 or 4 different doctors, or should they just stick with one place if they're getting a lot of hours. And I think, again, if it's a place that you are really passionate about, if you're in a hospital and you love it, you're getting a lot of hours, you're getting great um, experiences there, then I feel like there's really maybe not a need to go look for something elsewhere. But again, just kind of where your passion kind of follows you and the quality of the work that you're getting.
Mhm.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of students originally were able to get, hospital shadowing. And I think with like COVID and then with the age limits, like that's not always possible. So I've had a lot of great success with like clinics or also nursing homes. And I think sometimes they get like poo-pooed on because it doesn't seem like as maybe as in air quotes as important as maybe shadowing in a hospital. But I have to say a lot of my students' experiences in nursing homes have been even stronger than, or the quality rise has been more. They've been able to have more of an impact, have more patient interaction than maybe even in some clinics or hospitals. So I think there are a lot of varieties and a lot of settings that students can shadow. And sometimes, we just have to look what's around us, but really focus on the quality of the experience as well.
I completely agree about nursing homes. Yeah, I think that you get to start younger too, so it's kind of a good advantage, and you get like so much more patient interaction. A lot of times in like hospitals, you're maybe helping at like the front desk, or like maybe you're filling like water jugs or things like that. You're maybe not necessarily seeing too much patient, like you're not interacting with the patients as much. But I definitely have had some kids have some really meaningful like nursing home patient interactions and relationship building too, which is so great because in hospitals, you're probably hopefully not like seeing the same people every week, but in nursing homes, you will be seeing consistent patients, consistent residents. And so I think that that's like the big advantage of it too.
Yeah, you're building that rapport and you're having a lot more interaction on the day to day in terms of, like, again, building a relationship with the people. And I also feel like it's so multifaceted. There's so many things that are happening in nursing homes.
Mhm.
Um, One of my first students with Moon Prep did primarily nursing home shadowing, and she had multiple acceptances, and we had a ton to write about in her essays, and it was a great experience for her.
Great. I like nursing homes, or like senior centers or things like that. I've had kids also like volunteer at like camps with kids with disabilities or things along those lines. So like definitely like non-traditional ways of getting some patient interactions or potentially shadowing could work.
And also, like, I know we're on the topic of passion. I feel like nursing homes and senior centers have a little bit maybe more flexibility where maybe you are shadowing, but maybe there is a window for you to bring a passion of yours in. So if you're passionate about the arts, maybe you can also volunteer your time and play some music for the residents, or maybe you can like host a bingo or like a art
Oh,
class.
I
So
had
I
a
feel like,
student do that too. That's fun.
yes, yeah. So I think it allows like you're still experiencing, you're building relationships, you're building rapport, but you can also sometimes bring your passions with you, which is really great. And I think we've all had a lot of success with our students that have been able to bring their passions to, their volunteering and shadowing environments.
Such a good point. It's like a great way to like add layers to a resume or to your activities by taking your art passion or your music passion or whatever it might be to another activity. So that is a great way to showcase that passion and interest.
And it kind of brings some cohesiveness to your application as well. I feel like Lindsay and I have definitely talked about this on prior podcasts. Should a student have like a very cohesive resume and application, or should it kind of be multifaceted and have a lot of different things going on? And I I don't think there's a right or wrong way. We've discussed it in length in the other podcast episode. But I do feel like I really enjoy when students have that cohesiveness throughout, where they play the violin, they love the violin, they're in band and, orchestra at school, and then they're doing their shadowing at a nursing home, loving that, volunteering, and they're blending the two. And like, once a month they're putting on a free concert for the nursing home as well.
Yeah, I agree. I really think it shows a lot of cohesive, passion when you blend your interests and your passions together.
Okay,
And I don't think that's always possible, but when it is possible, I think it's great.
I'd agree with that. Kind of speaking of other activities that students might be involved in, do you think it's worthwhile for them to like complete an EMT course? I've had a few kids who've done like a CNA certification or CPR certification. How much value do you think that adds to the application?
I think it wildly depends on your state.
Mm.
Um, you know, Definitely looking into the regulations in your state. I know a lot of people in New Jersey will do it because you're able to. Um, I think it does add some depth. Again, if it's just your avenue. If you know you love emergency medicine and that's like potentially what you'd want to do, then I think that doing like an EMT course is great. And if you're able to volunteer, like that's an awesome way to do so. I don't really think that a lot of kids are able to get shadowing in like an ER, right? Where their shadowing would be kind of more on a baseline, medical floor. So I think again, like if it's something that you have a true interest in, I'd say go for it. It can be really eye-opening, and I think a lot of kids have great experiences from it who choose to do it.
So I would agree. And I would just like take it like one step further that the certification, in my opinion, I mean, EMT, a lot of times you are doing some ride along, so you could have some value there. But, getting the certification is one thing, but getting a job, or like, volunteering as like in the rescue squad or doing ride alongs or whatever it might be, that's really where the value is going to be at. Um, so if you plan to just get certified and that's it, I think it doesn't necessarily like show that you did have that passion and your interest in it because you didn't take it that extra step. Yeah. So this last cycle, I had one student who went through the whole effort of getting his certified nursing assistant certification and went through the course, got tested, passed the test, passed all the exams, but, didn't do anything with it. So it was not really something we could mention on his application per se. It was in his activity list, but it wasn't listed in his um essays really because he didn't have anything to tell us about it. Like, it was just him talking about, all he could talk about was getting certified. So making sure that you can actually use whatever you've done is, I think, really key as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think I've had a few students, I had like 3 students this year who had their EMT certification, and all 3 of them actually like participated in like weekly ride-ons and had a
Mhm.
lot of great experiences, saw a lot of great things, and we were able to use those detailed experiences in their essays. There was even one student that I helped with interview prep. She had her EMT certification and a firefighter certification. So she was just like a rock star. I thought that was super unique. She was able to talk about both of those experiences just because she had a lot of hands-on experiences like helping the public. So yeah, I really do think instead of just checking boxes, do things that you're passionate about and that you'll follow through with. Because the experiences and the hands-on work that you complete after the certification weighs much more heavily than just having that certificate with your name on it.
What about like different classes students should take? Like, can they feel free to take like an advanced English class or a history class or like art history, whatever it might be? Like, is that still useful for their applications?
That's a great question, and I think we get this question almost every day. So I think it kind of falls a line in the box of what should I be doing? So I think a lot of families will ask this, and I think a lot of times if you are passionate about English and history, amazing. Take AP Lang, take AP Lit, take APUSH, take AP Gov. But if that's not really your interest, then you don't have to push yourself to be an A push and, spend 4 hours a day studying for a subject that you're really not so interested in. So if you are well-rounded and you like all subjects, so yeah, great, push yourself in those rigorous courses. If not, you don't have to pretend to be. It's okay to be passionate about STEM. And I would rather a student take United States history honors and then use their extra time that they're not studying for A push and take an elective that's maybe like biochemistry or anatomy, so something that is maybe more in line with their passions. So I do think we do have different types of students, some that like all subjects and some that are really just STEM focused, and I think that's really okay, and I'd rather students be successful in the classes that they're more passionate about than just try to check the boxes of being well-rounded or faking an interest that they might really not be interested in taking.
Completely agree. I completely agree. Like it's more important to follow those passions. You'll do better. And you only have so many hours in the day, so you might as well spend it on activities and like classes that you like.
Totally. And typically the class that like you spend the most time doing is not, is a class that you chose to continue with, but it's not actually something that you really enjoy doing. I feel like
Mm.
that's always what happens. And I feel like A push is always that class. Students have a hard time in it.
My example class always, because I feel like every single, at least when I was in high school, I feel like every single student of my friends at least took A push. And so I just felt like if you didn't do A push, like you weren't part of like the group or whatever. And so it just was like the natural thing to do. And I always tell kids like, it's time consuming. It's a lot of reading. It's a lot of like you have to, memorize a lot of things. It is a lot of work. And if you don't like history, like, it's not 100% necessary. So yeah, target your time. Target your time essentially.
Yeah, and I think like just a little bit reminder, I know students are going to be starting school. There's an add drop period for a reason. So if you're in a wrong level or a wrong class, use that add drop.
Let's talk a little bit about like the application now. Nicole, do you think a personal statement should highlight anything in particular about medicine?
So not necessarily. I think some of the best maybe have a snippet of a little bit of an introduction. It's hard to eliminate it fully just because we do have a lot of students who are also applying to pre-med options or just like a biology degree at another school. So they do want to have something that speaks to their passion and what they want to do. So sometimes during the brainstorming process, we'll discuss that maybe having a little bit or like a snippet of your background in medicine so far could be useful, but not standard. I don't always, probably it's not the norm to have really any medically related information in their personal statement.
I always think it's so funny when like a student will write an entire essay about how they love reading books, and at the end they'll be like, "Oh, and that's why I will be a good doctor because I love reading books."
Yeah.
So they sometimes students think they have to like have their why major or some of an interest or passion of theirs included in a personal statement, and if it doesn't fit, it really sticks out that it doesn't fit. And I also like to remind students as well, if you are a BSMD candidate, you are going to be writing so many why medicine essays or discussing so many of your STEM or medically related activities that it's okay if your personal statement is about something completely different because you're going to talk about medicine a whole lot other places.
Absolutely. I agree. It
I
has to really fit. Like it has to be the perfect fit. Um, and like looking through their essay map to see like this topic is not really going to be asked anywhere else. We don't want to talk about this specific piece anywhere else, so we can use it. You kind of sometimes have to work backwards when you're planning the topic for that.
I always tell kids to like map out their why medicine and their Common App personal statement kind of at the same time. Cause a lot of the times they do want to talk about like, their EMS, like um shadowing or volunteering or whatever it might be. And it could be like a really important part of their lives. But if that's going to be like the sole focus of your why med, then you're kind of, out of luck there. So I think thinking about those two essays at the same time can be really helpful.
I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah. I've even had students who are like, these are 4 things I definitely want to write about. Let's kind of like outline them and then decide where they'd be best fit.
Good idea.
Exactly. I love that. I love when you can kind of talk about a few different ideas and then you could say, oh, this one is like unfolding into like maybe a why medicine. And then this one could maybe be our personal statement because it's unfolding into this really great story about your life. So sometimes if you do plan out a few different ideas, the why medicine one sticks out. And then sometimes you can also say, listen, if you're going to do this one for your personal statement, we don't want to do that for your why medicine. Do we have another topic for why medicine? So I completely agree. Sometimes you have to kind of do backwards planning or like do it at similar times. Just you don't have to write both at the same time, but at least have the topics kind of sorted out.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like at least an outline of like what you might want to include and the activities you want to cover. Cause there's nothing worse than realizing, oh man, this actually fits into my why medicine like theme so much better than it did my personal statement. Cause it's, then you might have to do work. So yeah, a little bit of planning in the beginning can save you some effort. And one thing I like about personal statements too is like as a doctor, you need to have a lot more like than just your passion for medicine. Like, you might be wanting to showcase like your leadership skills or your communication skills or your empathy skills or whatever it might be. And that might be through activities that aren't related to medicine. So even if you're not explicitly saying like, oh, I'm going to be a great doctor one day and this is why, you're showing them essentially like what kind of student you're going to be on campus and also like what type of, physician you might be one day too. So I think that you can use that personal statement as a way to showcase qualities rather than like a drive towards medicine.
Yeah, exactly. That's perfect.
Okay, another really big question that we always get to is, do you need to start a club or a nonprofit to stand out and to showcase passion?
Yeah, I feel like we get this question a lot from students and parents alike. And I really feel like it depends. It's one of those things. Are you just trying to check off a box? Or is there something that you really are passionate about and there is a need for that organization or that club at your school or in your community? So I find that my students previously have had the most success with nonprofits is if they've done something like a mission trip or worked with an organization and they realized, well, now my mission trip is over and I still want to support that community that I helped. So I find like that's a really good example of, fundraising and bringing, education or resources to another country that you might have helped for, a week or two over a summer break or whatnot is a great way to kind of build that nonprofit. But kind of very similar as the EMT certification question, like, are you just creating a club or a nonprofit to add it to your resume and we really don't have strong examples or impact or passion connected to it, then I would say you can, spend your time elsewhere, as a member or doing another activity where your time can be, more useful.
I completely agree. If there's a need, then go for it because if you have a passion for something, you want to be able to spend your time doing that activity. And if your school does not have like a Red Cross club or something, then you think that it would be impactful, go for it. But other than that, if they have all the clubs that you are interested in joining, then there's no need to add something new.
Yeah, a nonprofit, kind of similar to like the EMS like certification, just like setting up a nonprofit doesn't really necessarily mean something if you have no impact. Like there's no
And
real
I feel, yeah, kind of bouncing back. Sorry, Lindsay.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like some students, you can just tell, I had a student once where they had a nonprofit that they opened up and we were deciding, how we were going to write about it in one of the essays. It was like, well, how did you come about wanting to do this? Like, what was your drive to make this be a nonprofit? And their response was a little bit lackluster of like, oh, I don't know. I just kind of thought it was a good idea. And that kind of goes back to like the checking of the box. I think it was just something that it was, oh, if I have a not-for-profit, that's a great idea. Like that's a way to showcase like leadership and all of these other qualities, but the passion was very much lacking. The need was there, I guess, but kind of the drive and the why was not as strong as it might have been in another student.
Agree. Completely agree. It all comes back to passion at the end of the day.
Yes, we are not just checking boxes here. It's not going to be impactful. I mean, I feel like I say this a lot to parents when they're asking, should we be checking all these boxes? And we're going up against thousands of applicants per school at a lot of these schools. If everyone has all of these things, everyone's boxes are all checked, like what sets them apart. It's how they're speaking about the things that they've done versus just having the things that they've done written down.
I mean, that's such a good point because I feel like we will sometimes work with kids who have like a 4.0 GPA, a 1570 on their SAT. They are checking the boxes, but they're missing that like passion box that's being checked. And
Mhm.
a lot of times they don't do super well. So having a great GPA, having a great SAT score doesn't mean that you're an automatic in if you don't care about
Yeah.
actual showcase that passion and interest in medicine.
And even if you have, the 300 shadowing hours and you have a nonprofit and you play a couple sports and do a couple clubs, like if you aren't truly like have that desire for it and like are able to speak about it in a resume, in an interview and in your essays, you know, I don't think it's as impactful.
Oh my God, you guys are so right. I'm so glad you brought that up. It's so important to mention how passion really makes that application stand out. It's not the GPA, it's not only the test score, it's not only the resume items. Such a good point.
Like you can look so great on paper, but then having a conversation. And I think we see it more when we are prepping our students for interviews. Where
Yes.
you're trying or like, brainstorming the why medicine essay and we're kind of having to pull a little bit of it out of them. And like it for the students, I think that have more success is where it kind of does come a little bit more natural.
Remember I was doing interview prep for a student like years ago, and he just was like, had been rejected from like everywhere else. It was like his kind of last chance. Spirits were definitely low. And so when we were doing interview prep, I remember asking him, like, okay, like, why do you want to be a doctor? And I've been working with him for like years at this point, and this was the first time he ever told me, he's like, it's because my parents are like, making me do this. I think he was just feeling really down at the time, but like you could definitely tell from like his energy and like his answers, even without explicitly telling me it's because his parents were making him do it, that he was just like not feeling the passion and the interest. And so um that whole like hour that we spent together, it was just about like kind of rediscovering his passion and his interest in medicine. And by the end, um, he was kind of back to his like normal self. Did the interview, did get accepted, but I think that if we like look at the difference between him at the beginning of the call and him at the end of the call, I definitely wouldn't have accepted the kid that was there at the beginning of the call because he didn't really want to be there. It was really obvious, it did seem like his parents were just making him do this versus a kid who really wants it and really wanted to be there. So the passion, obviously he was the same kid, same stats, same resume items, same everything, but it was all about like that drive and that passion that he had that wasn't there anymore at the beginning of the call that we had to rediscover.
Yeah, I feel like when the admissions teams are reviewing, all of these applications, these are great students.
Mhm.
Um, I think when you're sitting in a room and you're on the committee trying to figure out like who do we think is going to be the best fit for our class, the people that shine through with that personality within their application and that, you know, just passion that shines through. I feel like we've said passion 100 times already, but I think it's kind of the number one thing that's needed. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter how many places you shadow at or, which types of specialties or this or that, but doing things that you're passionate about and showcasing that in your application.
And I think since we've mentioned passion so many times, I think it's, our audience is of all grade levels. It's okay if you don't know your passion right away, right? So we definitely want you to explore new things. We want you to join clubs, join sports, pick up an instrument. It's okay if you start something and it's not really of interest to you, as long as you keep looking to find things that you are passionate about or things that you enjoy doing. So the first club or organization or sport that you start might not be the final organization or activity that you really are interested in. So just keep looking, speak to your community leaders or speak to your teacher or your school counselor as well as your mood prep counselor, and we can kind of help you find what's available to you. But it's okay if you try something and you don't love it. There's a whole lot more out there for you to explore.
such a good point. I feel like a lot of my freshmen that I work with will be like, well, I joined robotics, or I guess it really may be a sophomores that I started working with. They joined robotics. They hated it as a freshman. And they're like, well, now I have to stick with it for the next 4 years because I don't want to show that I don't have like passion and dedication to things. Uh, find find another interest. It's okay. Like you're allowed to explore new things, and it's okay if like it doesn't work out, and it's okay if some things change. As long as you're kind of consistently working towards goals and like, doing those types of things,
I
whatever
feel
they
like
might.
I mention with instruments so often.
Yes, exactly. It's time consuming and sports too.
And you like have to do one or like chorus in middle school in most states. So like a lot of kids just get like weeded into an instrument and then they're like ninth grade and they absolutely hate it. But they're like, I've already dedicated 3 years to this.
Mhm.
I should just stick with it. Like I should just stick it out. And you don't have to if you hate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just had a student actually ask me yesterday. He was like, I've done volleyball for 3 years. And he's like, I hate it. But all my friends are in lacrosse. I think I would really like it. Would colleges care if I don't do my 4th year of volleyball and I start lacrosse next year? I'm like, no, they won't. That's not going to be like a blemish on your resume. I actually think it's better that you are exploring and trying new things and, spending your time in areas that you are of interest. So it's okay.
Yeah, in ninth grade, you're like, what, 14? How are you expected to know what you're gonna love if you've never done robotics, if you've never done, like, these certain activities? So, I think it is okay to at least, like, try new things and figure out what your passions are and rediscover different new things as, like, more opportunities present themselves, so it can change.
And the other
Yeah.
thing too, like we're talking about the activity sheet. You're only putting 10 activities anyway. So if you try 3 different clubs in ninth grade that you absolutely hate, you don't even have to list them. They don't even have to know that you did it. You know, it doesn't have to be like, oh my gosh, they're gonna see that I played lacrosse for 1 year and then I quit. It they wouldn't even necessarily have to know.
Mhm.
And I
That's
can't tell you how many I feel like BSMD students have been in DECA for 4 years or, speech and debate, which both of those are not STEM related, but it's something that they started in ninth grade and they love. And so they are still a member of because it's an organization that they've cared about. So, I mean, I feel like a lot of my BSMD students are in, business organizations or speech and debate. And that's speech and debate is super time consuming. I feel like just as time consuming as robotics because there's so much practice and so many competitions. But if you love it, keep doing it. If you don't love it, it's okay to find something that you do love.
um, maybe as, like, a last little point, maybe we can share a few examples of BSMD applications, that really stood out to us due to passion. Alex, do you wanna kick us off?
Oh, it's such a good question. Ooh, at the top of my head, two students that I think their applications did stand out due to their passions. I think the first one was something I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier. I had a student that was really passionate about medicine and really passionate about the arts, and he combined his interests with the arts and medicine and created a nonprofit where he spent weekends every month, dedicating time to work with residents and the senior center. So he was able to use his passion for the arts and STEM to make a difference in the lives of senior residents for years. He was actually able to make a global impact as well by recording some of his music and sending that worldwide. So he had a great impact. And when he talked about his organization, he would just smile. So you just knew how passionate he was about that experience that he was a part of. I think another student that had a real successful application and she stood out. She was interested in medicine. She was a BSMD candidate and she had more of a public health spin. She worked for like a lobbyist and she worked at the capital of the state she lived in. So her resume had a little bit of a different spin than some other BSMD candidates because there was a lot of public health. And her application just stood out beautifully. And she's currently in a BSMD program. So I think those are just kind of two examples of where a student's interest and passion and being really proud of the work that they were doing every single day was evident to the admissions officers.
I have two similar, but a little bit different with their own spin. Um, A few years ago, I had one student who was super passionate about her instrument, and she played at school, she played outside of school. It's just like something that she was really, really drawn to, loved doing it. She was also volunteering in a nursing home because she was interested in medicine, BSMD student, and she, over a few summers while she was there, she'd kind of go and do more hours over the summer. She put on a summer concert series with another one of her um orchestra members at school, where I think it was like every Friday night over the summer, they would put on like a free concert for the residents. And so she was like volunteering there during the day and kind of getting more medical experience. And then at night, she was coming back and, putting on a little concert for them and just kind of bridging those two things together. I think it like ended up really seamlessly happening. Um, Another student who did something extremely similar in music again, which I think a lot of our examples are music, but it's not the only ones. But he again was in band at school, super, super passionate about it, was like lead chair and like had a lot of leadership within the band. He also has a brother with special needs. He was doing a lot of volunteering with special needs and helping his brother out at the facility that his brother went to. And he did some research about the effects of music in young children with developmental disabilities. So he kind of bridged three things together, and he ended up volunteering his time at one of the facilities that his brother went to and teaching a music class to them, kind of like on an after school kind of program once a week. So he was able to take the research that he was doing, and like that's how he kind of made his lesson plans for the week for the students. And it was really beautiful to see kind of all three things come together. Um, so that was definitely one that stood out to me.
Love it. And then one that I can think of off the top of my head was a student who was really passionate about like anti-vaping. Um, I can't exactly remember how she got started with this, but whenever whenever she was like younger, they went through like DARE, which is like, obviously anti-smoking and anti-drug, but not necessarily, and maybe anti-drinking, but not necessarily anything about anti-vaping. And so that was kind of when vaping was really exploding too. And everyone thought it was like the safe alternative. Um, but as like more research came out, it was a little bit too late. And like a lot of kids her age were like hooked on the vaping. And so she started doing research kind of related to anti-vaping, kind of similar to like Nicole's student. I feel like really combined like three diverse things of like research, a nonprofit, and also kind of similar to Alex's, did like some policy work as well. So she did research kind of about, tobacco use and anti-vaping and things like that. She also started a like organization where she was going to like different elementary schools and talking about like the dangers of vaping and like kind of teaching kids young, like on a peer-to-peer kind of level. And then she also like was working with her town and helped change some of like the legislation about like what age people could buy vaping materials as well. So she kind of had like a similar to a lot of these other kids, like having like multiple levels to an activity. And I think that really showcases passion because she thought of different ways that she could be making a difference, just like all these other students. It branched out beyond just like doing research about a certain thing or, starting a nonprofit about a certain thing. She had a lot of different levels, a lot of different ways to have that impact. And those I always think are really meaningful. Perfect. Well, I think that's it for us today then. Thanks so much for bearing with us on this like kind of longer episode, but we really enjoyed talking about passion in BSMD applications and hope you did too. Check us out in 2 weeks for the next episode of the White Coat Club and don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.